Lately my channel has gotten a bit religious. All this talk about gods with me slandering some and praising others. It's controversial. You know, religion is divisive, and that's not what the MistahFeet channel on YouTube is about. Just like Haktua, this is about bringing everyone together and lifting people up. So for today, we're gonna go back in time to continue the Guaranteed Characters series.
That's right.
Which resumes with the newest unit from the newest nation. Will she become the best character that the game has given us so far? Who knows? Well, I know. But before we get into the challenge, I would like to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, NTE. NTE is the biggest release in the Big 2-6, packed with tons of content for everyone to enjoy. They've even partnered with Porsche for a collab vehicle. That's how big we're talking here. NTE is an anime-style open-world supernatural RPG that includes an engaging story, massive city districts to explore, tons of vehicles, and multiple side modes to enjoy. One of which includes multiplayer, and it is cross-platform BTW. So you don't have to worry if your friend is on PlayStation or mobile, you can play with them regardless of the device. This is one of the more fun gachas you can play, where the gameplay feels more tied to the game itself rather than just endless grinding. There's no 50-50 on the character banners, you are guaranteed that unit within 90 pulls, and the rate for an S-class in a single pull is 0.99%. Currently, there are over 15 playable characters, and you have the chance to get over 400 pulls for free. Now, you might be thinking, MistahFeet, you're so funny and attractive, but if the rates are so good and they're giving us 400 pulls, they might as well just give out the characters for free. Well, joke's on you, because you can get a free S-class character Chiz by just leveling up. There's tons to explore with NTE, with the dynamic weather, day-night cycles, working public transportation, and fully explorable buildings. NTE is available now to enjoy on PC, PlayStation 5, and mobile devices, and you can download the most fun free game to play of 2026 using my link in the description. Thanks again to NTE for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back into the rules. Here are the rules. We can only use Aino, and all claymores are allowed. It took us 5 years to get a Hydro Claymore user, and it's a character who can barely pick it up. Now let's see if we can beat Genshin Impact only using Aino. We start our journey celebrating an anniversary. Back in 2025, Genshin Impact turned 5 years old, and as for tradition, the consumers get to have a free 10 pull, which we then used on the banner, The Lone Light Knocks at Night.
Cause day and night, the lonely stoner seems to free his mind at night. He's all alone through the day and night. The lonely loner seems to free his mind at night. At night.
And that's how Aino was born. We also got this cat. Yeah, alright, we're starting. Getting into the meat of this challenge, we begin with Amber's Domain. And we can already see the effects that power creep has had on Genshin characters, because Chi-Chi, that poor little sack of rats, struggled and got stuck trying to clear this, while Aino just zips around the whole thing effortlessly. Aino continues to frame mod Chi-Chi and the other children by doing the exact same thing in both Kaya and Lisa's domain. She is off to a very strong start so far, beating Mondstadt Act 1 in just over 20 minutes, and when it comes to the guaranteed characters, she does have some pretty strong competition against the likes of Kachina, Lynette, and Barbara. Me when I lie. So where does Aino fall on the spectrum? Is she good or is she bad? Well, I know. I'm not gonna do that joke anymore. It's really not that funny. Aino is a good character. She's a Claymore character, which are great weapons to have in a solo run since they do the most physical damage to shields. Also, she's got like the Farina thing going on where the animation like kind of plays into itself and just loops. This claw just yeets the sword at enemies. This leads us into her main damaging ability, Moose Catcher. What does that even mean? What is a moose? Is she trying to catch a band, or did they fuck up Moose that badly? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Let's go chat MistahFeet. When you hold the skill, Aino aims it gets sent flying. It's useful for exploration, as we've seen in the domain, and since Aino is already a short and slow character, having this option available is pretty nice. As for the tap variation, the claw just grabs them and she flies into them ass first. If Kaya had this ability, it probably wouldn't even hit for more than double digits. Heyo! Give me some. The damage on this move is not amazing. It's better than average, but it's no Searing Onslaught. Oh, Aino skill. You're no Diluc skill. It has a 10-second cooldown, which is nice to have, and it deals 2 instances of hydro damage, which will be important later on. But you know what also has a 10-second cooldown, but hits 3 times? Oh, Aino skill. Wow, this seems like a pretty good character so far. Where's the burst? I don't really like it, if I'm being honest. Aside from having some of my least favorite voice lines in the game.
Ding dong water bomb! Look, a rainbow!
Where is the rainbow, Aino? Are you calling me stupid, blind, or homophobic? I want to see the rainbow. The burst does not do shit for damage, just honestly. These are the type of numbers that will make you rub your eyes just to make sure that you're not seeing anything wrong. The hydro application is very good, and if we were doing a Flins plus Aino only run, then I'm sure we would have been unstoppable. But that's not the case. We live in the wrong timeline. This ain't no water bomb. This barely even qualifies as a water balloon.
No way he just put in a Naruto reference in there. Yeah, man, my anime fans are going, man, I love this reference.
But like I said, the hydro application is solid, which brings us to the final point about Aino, her element. This is the first time in the history of the MistahFeet channel here on YouTube that we've gotten to use a hydro character that isn't a catalyst, and I can thankfully say that she is the best hydro unit we've had so far, but that's not a high bar. We can apply our elements at a decent rate, and the Claymore hits do much better against hydro shields than the Eye of Perception. Gee, who would have thought? It turns out this element isn't complete shit when you're allowed to have another form of consistent damage. Thank you, Aino. In just 3 hours and 48 minutes, Aino has already made it to the second active mod stat, making her the fastest of the guaranteed characters so far, even surpassing Lynette. If you're ever in a race, just know that a moose catcher is faster than both sprinting and a car. This is very important information to have, but I still don't know what a moose is. The Eye of the Storm was the next obstacle in the way of Aino. You ever had that experience of trying to get away from like an annoying little sibling or cousin at a family gathering, like you were just actively avoiding them? Now just imagine that kid can zip towards you and they're carrying a massive club. And that's right, viewers of the MistahFeet channel here on YouTube, the debate club is back. Look at this. Our passive hits harder than the autos, and also the burst, because it sucks. There's a reason why this is the best in-slot weapon for Moika. Not clickbait. We just get to spin around and give them the good old smack. And it's not even just the debate club putting in work. Even the moose catcher is hitting hard. It just one-shotted this random hilly churl. Is this the moose? One of the benefits to the skill I mentioned earlier was the fact that it hits twice, which combined with our attacks from this combo made it so that this abyss shield went down in seconds. The last enemy in Act 2 was the Ruin Guard, and this was the moment that I realized our burst was a lost cause.
You can actually pinpoint the second when his heart rips in half. And now.
The Ruin Guard has a 70% physical resistance, and yet our auto attacks were hitting harder than our burst. I get that it's mimicking a rubber duck, but we can't be doing this little damage. Just compare this damage to the skills. This is how many days are in a year if you don't count one of them. She's got that evil ass laugh with it too. With the final active mod stat came Aino's first damage high, which was a result that I promise none of you would have guessed. We pushed the Hydro Mage over to the Cryo Flowers to give us the Shatter reaction in the damage number of 559. Yes, we're talking about Shatter in the Big 2-6. That's what we have to work with when we have this as our burst. So far, our Aino's damage has been able to keep up, and that's largely due to the fact that I was able to ascend her earlier than some other characters because I actually remembered to do her trial run when she was on banner. I hope you're happy, comment. I finally did a trial run. I'm mentioning our damage because in the fight against Dvalin, Aino did well enough to beat it in 2 phases in spite of our burst contributing nothing. It actually managed to miss Dvalin here. Look, genius inventor by the way. But you know what didn't manage to miss? I hope you enjoyed that splash sound effect I added. I had to watch an intro and an outro in order to get that. Aino completed Mondstadt in a time of 5 hours and 16 minutes, and for some reason, I can't get the ending shot anymore because Hoyoverse just wants to troll me. My reward for beating this quest now is a flashbang. Well, I got a little trolling for you, Hoyo.
Sometimes you gotta troll the trolls.
After doing some more grinding, we were now able to do the Leeway Archon quest following parts of Lantern Rite. This was probably one of the worst periods of time to start Genshin Impact because Lantern Rite makes this quest a mess. You can't even start it without doing the first act of the event. Why? There's so many characters being introduced, and it's clear that they have some relation to the Traveler, and they even talk about Nod Krai.
Chills.
It was very annoying to deal with, and I have no idea why it's unlocked at AR20 rather than just having it be available after the Leeway quest.
Skip.
Very well.
But when does this game get f***ing good?
Assassinated?
At least we got to hear Zhongli, so the streak of miraculous VAs being in my videos continues. Aino's VA doesn't have too many roles, but you know, some people might recognize her as Child in the newest Resident Evil game. Now that we've actually begun Leeway, it took Aino a shorter time to complete Act 1 than it did skipping the entire first act of Lantern Rite. No, I'm not going to get over this. The first group of enemies was the part of the quest that took her the longest. Yes, we have a shorter cooldown on our burst, but it's our burst, so it's not doing much. The Claw was the main reason why she was able to do this so quickly, as she both rammed into the Ruin Hunter while also kerplunking her way through Cloud Retainer's domain. I don't know what that word means either, this character perplexes me. With the first act finished, it's now time for Aino to get ready for level 50, which means we need to go over to Nod Krai, using a teleport waypoint that the game doesn't tell you about. Yet another part of this game that I will not get over. That waypoint, actually goes to... Aino's boss is Knuckle Duckle, the creator's pride. We've seen two of her creations so far, which are both synonyms and antonyms for the word useful, so where does Knuckle Duckle fall? This is a competent creation. This boss is not terrible to farm as Aino, it's just time consuming. I had not fought this boss prior to filming this challenge, so I got thrown into the deep end and I had to learn how to swim. So dodging did take some time to get used to, but of course the goat managed to learn the enemy's patterns in a children's game. The real reason this boss was time consuming was because of this phase right here. Knuckle Duckle activates a shield and creates these little minions. My guess here is that you're supposed to destroy or charge these minions, which will deplete the boss's shield. However, that was not going to happen, which means that whenever the boss puts up the shield, we have to just run around for about a minute until they put the shield down. Yes, this boss likes to waste your time. It's not the worst one I've had to fight for these challenges, but it does provide a sense of dread in my body knowing that I will have to spend like 5 minutes of just running around in a circle. We all have to do things we don't like for the sake of getting more XP.
I'm about to level up and you look like just enough XP.
At least we can now reach level 50, giving us a big stat increase and making it so our burst deals 20 more damage. I want you to take a guess in the comments on whether or not this will break 100 by the end of this video. Leeway Act 2 starts out at the cooking pot, which... obviously, a Hydro character cannot do, silly. It says to heat up the pot, not kerplunk it. Gosh, maybe I am stupid. I figured I'd pull out Yanfei because, you know, what the hell, sure. And her cooking abilities were definitely not as good as Amber or the Travelers, so now the Leeway Act 2 cooking pot tier list looks like this so far. Once we made it inside Madame Ping's domain, we got to see a very unique interaction for Aino, which was her doing Electrocharged. There's no moon in here, nor is there any in our party. No fancy italic, shiny font. This power creep is more egregious than the character kits. Following another Forced Lantern Rite section, yes, this is still going on. We took on some more treasure hoarders to finally finish Act 2. Prior to the finale, we decided to forego the debate club so we could make the prototype Archaic, which is like basically the debate club, but as a 4-star. It's almost a direct upgrade. I called the debate club the best in slot for Mawika, but I didn't call it the bestest in slot. There's a difference. Act 3 begins next to the Animo fan, where our grappling hook is not able to reach the floating island. This thing can go about as far as the hypotenuse of the Ruin Guard and Aino here. So if anyone out there wants to do that math and see how many claws we were away from the island, you have my blessing. Sorry, I can't do math right now. I'm playing Genshin Impact.
It's time to sing whenever you're ready.
The child fight did not go the way of the Shogun, thankfully. He went back to being a comedy act. He does have Hydro resistance, but, you know, joke's on him because our burst already doesn't do shit for damage. This is why the prototype Archaic is so important, because we are going to be normal attacking for most of our damage, and when we can hit numbers like 2.4k, you know we're doing it right. She didn't even put any effort into that swing, and look at that. That's more damage than the God of Electro. See, I dropped my pencil because, you know, I'm just so blown back by her damage. And with one last interference from the Lantern Rite quest, we completed Leeway after 11 hours and 36 minutes, which is leaps and bounds ahead of the other guaranteed characters. What happened here? She would have gotten a sub 11-hour run had it not been for Lantern Right. This is the child prodigy. For the next couple of quests heading up to Inazuma, normally when using a Hydro character, my thoughts are, man, there are so many Hydro shields in this quest. This sucks. I want to kill myself. But now that I'm using a Hydro character that has physical damage more than every 12 seconds, my thoughts were, man, there are so many Hydro shields in this quest. This sucks. These quests were definitely a lot better with Aino, don't get me wrong, especially since there's a good chunk of Cryo shields that are weak to Claymores. And while this is, mathematically speaking, the best Hydro character equipped to deal with Hydro shields, it's still a Hydro shield at the end of the day, so it's gonna take a couple of minutes. Also, she can break the rocks in the J Chamber quest, so big ups to her for that. Can we get W's in the chat for Aino, please? Thank you.
W's in the shot.
If you can sit here and tell me that you see any of his health left in that HP bar, you would be lying. My fault, Genshin. I'll be sure to analyze the opponent's numbers better next time. But now that we're in Inazuma, I want to analyze our numbers, because our burst is hitting for 95 damage. So if you typed out your answer earlier, don't change it now. Well, no, don't do it. And even inside the prison, where they tried their hardest to scare off Aino from her bad habits, she managed to get a new damage high of 3.4k. This prototype Archaic is lifting her up more than the Moose Catcher. With the arrival of Inazuma Act 2, Aino is set to clear out the archery demonstration.
Pressure getting to you?
The claw is not able to reach it, but I mean, surely our burst can, right? This circle is huge, so obviously the targets would be in the radius of it, right? Well, they are in the radius of the burst. However, the duck is choosing to not shoot the objects. I have no idea why, but I can't really be surprised because, you know, this is the same ability that was missing Dvalin's big ass head.
You better hide your baby, or
You better hide that big ass forehead.
Heading into the finale, Aino didn't really have the best start against the Electro Monuments. Neither her, the cat, or Lightning could do anything here, which leads us to calling on Anetha to help us.
Enough! Help me!
But things started to pick up for Aino in the Delusion Factory. Hydro and Claymore is a bit of a sleeper combo when it comes to solo characters dealing with shields. She had a great matchup going into this domain, because she could deal with both Pyro and Geo agents pretty easily. The only shield she did bad against was Electro because it just doesn't work on them. But the Hydro one, it didn't cause us any problems since we just half-health the gunner immediately. Hot damn!
And you might want to gargle my ball sack.
The 8th of the Fatui Harbingers takes on the friend of both the 4th and whatever number Columbina was. You know, this is gonna be really awkward for the next Moon Festival.
Bro, Raiden didn't kill Rosalind. It was Aino.
No cap on God, bro.
The ice debuff was very noticeable during this fight. Claymore attacks are already fairly slow, but now that our animation speeds are reduced, we are genuinely attacking in slow motion, which is why the fire phase became such a relief for me. Our damage wasn't amazing or anything. We were definitely kerplunking here, but I don't think any mooses were being caught during this fight. We were just able to stick onto Rosaline without worried about being slowed, and we did survive this battle. At this point into Act 3, our final opponent was
Almighty Shogun of Muso no Hihochachi.
The Shogun caused us some problems at first. She was definitely doing her best to try and discipline this child, and I can't really blame her because these voice lines are pretty annoying. I still don't see the rainbow. However, the tides turned in our favor as the people's hopes and wishes actually managed to let our burst hit triple-digit numbers. Yes, we have hit for 284, but this was heavily buffed, so this does not count for the statement earlier. The doubters are still going strong at the moment, but there is no doubt that Aino had one of the fastest times for Inazuma, completing it in just 19 hours and 10 minutes. The bar for good characters used to be Inazuma in under 24 hours, so very few units have reached the level of under 20 hours. The Chasm quest continues the tradition of Dainsleif making us fight Abyssal Shields. The first one we came across was the Hydro Herald, in which Aino managed to clear it in a much faster time compared to the other Hydro characters. However, when it came to the Electro Abyss Lector, the Hydro Catalyst actually had a faster time than her. Congrats, Barbara and Mona. You now have one thing over Aino. Too bad there is only one of these required for the entire game. But the score isn't even tied for this quest because Aino's able to destroy the batteries unlike those two. What miserable characters. I seriously cannot believe I had to deal with that shit. And I'm gonna have to do it again for another character later this year. With the Dane situation being resolved, we are now able to ascend our Aino to level 70, giving her a new passive that actually helps her burst deal damage. Too bad we're not building elemental mastery. And the reason for that is we aren't really getting elemental reactions. You know, we can make people wet, but we can't do anything with it. So for a run like this, I just get more value from building attack, so I can do more with the autos and the skill. And of course, now that I've mentioned elemental reactions, we get an instance of Bloom that just like one-shots the entire area. But even so, oh, sorry, I'm getting word from an outside source. We do have an update regarding our burst, because at nearly 20 hours into this run, it finally deals triple-digit numbers consistently. 132 damage. Is this worth anything? Not really. It's just principle at this point. Aino has reached Sumeru in just 20 and a half hours, and that's insane if I'm just going to be honest. She's already like 5 hours ahead of the fastest guaranteed character, and she's only 30 minutes behind Zhongli. Who expected her to get these types of results? A liar. That's who.
Liar, liar, pants on fire! All right. Too far. Too far.
And it's not like she's doing anything in particular that is sticking out. The exploration is okay, the sustain is not there, and the damage isn't really all that. It's solid at this point, but the burst sucks, and the autos can hit hard at times, and the skill arguably isn't even kerplunking anymore. I have already accepted that it's not going to be catching any mooses later in this run. Those days are behind us, but even now, the kerplunking is starting to dip a little bit. What the fuck am I even saying?
Oh no, we've become so smart, they're stupid to us.
Waiting to be corrupted.
Those are living creatures. What do you mean spare parts? Act 5 of Sumeru, and this character is starting to get a little surprising. Like, yeah, she couldn't do the turrets in Scar's fight, and she can't cook. Big whoop. She's 5. You know who else was 5? Obama. Moving on. But she was able to do the skips in the Fatui factory. She was able to do the skips in the floating islands, and her damage is like still above average. Why is this happening? Why is this character being good? She's only 30 minutes behind Zhongli. Why is this character accomplishing so much? Of all the 4 stars I've done, I would think Bennett would be the best one, but he's not. Her burst even went back to double-digit numbers, but she's still the second fastest character I've played, and she might have been the fastest if I didn't have to do Lantern right. I told you, I'm not getting over that. Fontaine marked the point in our run where the enemies were starting to catch up to Aino. They were beginning to hit hard, really hard as a matter of fact. We even died in this room, but that was also because of bad RNG. Basically, the passive on our weapon did not proc on the Hydro Avatar, which would have done enough damage to kill it, but no! It worked on the Ruin Guard, meaning we got smacked. There was a lot of food being eaten in this Archon quest, which meant that this annoying-ass voice line actually had some facts and logic to back it up, because prior to this quest, this child was starving for the most part. And even when it comes to the Dane quest and his abyssal shields, our type coverage is insane for this part. Hydro damage is not great against cryo shields, but the Claymore more than makes up for that. Much more than it should, honestly. Like, just comparing this to the other runs, is this actually one of the best element and weapon combos to have? Unironically, it might just be. And it's on fucking Aino of all characters. What is happening? Originally in the story, Aino sent out Anefa to go find the Traveler in Netland, but this time around, we were going to get our hands dirty. They're at the entrance, so this should be quick. Given that Netland is one of the more combat-heavy Archon quests, we got to see a lot more of Aino here, and that wasn't too good for her in all honesty. I mentioned in Fontaine that we were taking more damage, and that trend continued over for this nation. The enemies were hitting us about as hard as like our double damage high. He literally just domed a child in the head. She even tried to show these dogs a rainbow and they just mauled her for it. Why are they so mean? It's not like she's doing that much damage to these guys anyway. It may not be doing that much damage, but I did pull off this sick skill shot right here. You see, I aimed past the boxer so I wouldn't activate his shield, but I wanted to make sure that the splash damage would hit both him and the sniper. This is the type of gameplay you watch the MistahFeet channel on YouTube for. Our skill might not be hitting too hard, but our plunge attacks did manage to get some chunks, so if you're looking for meta advice from MistahFeet, I would say that Aino plunge attacks with Shin Yun might just be the move, but you know, mum's the word. War is hell, but so are children, so let's see which of these two evils prevails. More of the same problems occurred here. We use our skill, Aino says chew on this, and the wolves do exactly that, but we also got to see more of the pylons and mimics. The pylons are pretty annoying with Aino. It is a 10-second cooldown that hits 2 times, which means that she is twice as effective as the Shogun, but you know, 1 times 2 is 2, and when there are numbers out there like 19, the 2 is better than the 1 still, but it's nothing crazy. There's bigger fish in the sea. Oh, Aino's skill. At least the Dendrosaur helped us out by not attacking. I don't know what he's doing up there, but it seemed happy at least. One would think that since our burst has really good hydro application, that would at least be beneficial for these parts, right? Well, it can be. When the water droplets decide to hit their targets, they are very helpful. However, you remember what happened in the Dvalin fight. If this ducky could not hit a dragon, do you really think it can hit an oval? But even if it can't hit a still object, thankfully it is able to hit the moving abyss creatures. Act 6 of Natlan, and it's with Dainsliff, so you know what that means. Right off the bat, we're going against 3 Hydro Abyss made shields. Gee, I wonder what element they want us to use. Well, joke's on this game again, because they actually give us cryo troops to help. These soldiers will occasionally infuse their weapons with cryo, so yes, we can actually get freeze on these shields and make shatter in the big 2-6 again. However, this proved to be a bit of a band-aid solution, because I still died in this quest twice. Not only do we have to wait on these soldiers to arrive, but freeze can also mess with our dodging since it doesn't cancel the attack. Freeze pauses enemy attacks, not interrupt them. So what happened here was the wolf was frozen, but I was preparing to dodge the initial spot where he was aiming. However, he kept getting frozen over and over again to the point that he was adjusting his aim every time he thawed out, until eventually we had no more freeze left and he 180'd my ass. As for the Dainsliff part of this, it's basically only shields. The first couple of enemies had shields that we could deal with easily, and even though water puts out fire, shoutouts to Paimon, I was still very careful when dealing with the Pyrolector because I did not want to get hit for like 2k damage. She's already eaten enough. Confidence is a strong feeling, but fear is even stronger. As for the enemies in between, I didn't pay much attention to them since as long as you destroy the candles here, you don't have to fight them. But now we have the last group of enemies. Oh boy. Aino did not stick the landing for this run. This was pretty agonizing, not gonna lie. And it mainly comes down to the fact that we have to stay close to them to do damage. And they keep teleporting one after another. And don't even get me started on Hitler again. You can probably tell just from the way I'm talking about this that I didn't really have the best time here. And to give you a better understanding of my pain, I want you to look at this Cryolector shield health and see what happened. I have to deal with that again, by the way. This marks the end of Natlan Act 6, so that means we have Nod Krai to start, right? So, you're gonna hate me. I did say in the previous video that I would do the Nod Krai quest with Aino, and I made that statement because I had not done the quest on my main account yet. So, I just assumed that Nod Krai would be like the other Archon quests. But, after dealing with the combat sections for that quest, I don't see much of a reason to include it for the challenge runs in this upcoming year. In most of the Nod Krai combat sections, you are using trial characters and a preset team. And in the instances where you are not using them, I don't find them to be that substantial. In Act 1, you fight 3 Fatui soldiers and 3 Wild Hunt enemies. There's a domain where you can use your team. It's the one where Arlecchino opens the path, but in this entire area, only 2 enemies are required to kill, and it's just Hilichurls. You can run past every other enemy except those 2 because they're right next to a device that you have to activate for the story. The only other instances I can remember are the one in Revere's domain that does actually have some difficult enemies, and there's also one other domain, but it's just slimes and some whopper flowers. But my decision to not do this for the videos yet stems from the fact that Nod Krai is so long. For these runs, I mash through the dialogue, and for Nod Krai, mashing through the dialogue would probably add another 10 to 12 hours. No, I'm not joking. And I don't think it's worth doing that when I have maybe like 2 minutes worth of content to talk about. I will say this, however, Goku Nod Krai will happen this year, and in the future, when Sneznaya comes out, I will include Nod Krai in those videos, assuming it is required for the Archon quest, which it very likely will be. But as of now, I'm sorry, I just don't want to waste 2 days of my life getting gameplay and for me to only talk about it for like a minute and a half. I just don't think it's worth my time. I'm sorry to those who I disappointed, but like, you play as Nefer more than anyone else in that quest. And if this was Nefer only, I would do it. But there's barely any opportunities to use your own team, so I just don't think it's worth it. So until Shneznaya comes out, I do not plan on doing Nod Krai. And that is the current situation, that's where I stand. And after 48 hours, 48 minutes, and 43 seconds, we beat Genshin Impact only using Aino. To say I was surprised would be an understatement. Why the f did Aino do so good? I genuinely have no idea. She ended only 30 minutes slower than Zhongli, making her currently the second fastest character we have seen. If you had told me back in 2022 when I first started doing these types of videos that a 4-star character called Aino would be the second fastest behind Zhongli, I would have said, you know what? Well, I may not know what kerplunking or what a moose catcher is, but I do know that Aino had one of the best runs on the MistahFeet channel, so let's see if the ratings reflect her performance. For damage, I will go with a 3. You know, it was fine. The bursts didn't really do anything, and the auto attacks kinda got carried by the archaic passive, but the skill did help a lot early on. However, since nothing really crazy happened in this run, I think a 3 is the right call here. Exploration, 3. Aino is a child, which makes her the worst type of character to explore with, but the claw was useful for certain scenarios, so I think that boosts her up a couple of points. Sustain, 0. We do not have a way to heal ourselves naturally. It's back to getting cavities. Nefa, my teeth hurt. Bosses, I think we got another 3. I don't really know what to say for this character. Like, she's just hard average on the board, but for some reason it's working. Like, she didn't excel at any boss in particular. She did just fine, but this somehow got her a award-winning run. She's the bland MC in a harem anime, nothing special, yet they get everything. Lastly, we have abilities / utility and take a guess. The skill is useful, but the burst sucks in this environment. But you know, who cares because she still cleared everything. She probably would have had the fastest time if it wasn't for Lantern, right? Genuinely, what happened in this run? I don't know, and I'm not doing a pun with her name. What happened? How was this even possible? She did better than Bennett, Venti, and even
the almighty Raiden Shogun.
God, she's going to get slandered for the rest of these videos. Overall, Aino gets a 12 out of 25, giving her an F, but she still aced the course. How? Aino ended with a damage high of like 3.4k and a buff damage high of near the exact same, but clearly these stats don't mean shit anymore. Thanks, Aino. We are now caught up on the Guaranteed Character series, meaning that we are now free to go back to discussing religion with the Archons Only series. And for the next character, I know we are going to have a bad time.
Tell me why.